afternoon, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Hope Okechukwu, and today we'll look at the blood supply to the pectoral girdle and upper limb. So we'll look at the blood supply. So the pectoral girdle and upper limb. By blood supply, we mean arterial supply, and venous drainage. But for today's lecture, our concentration will be on the arterial supply to the pectoral girdle and upper limb. So let me get the first. So what we are concentrating on is this. The arterial supply to the upper limb, pectoral girdle and upper limb, is primarily coming from what we call the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery. But this subclavian artery originates from the arch of aorta. So it originates from the arch of aorta. So in my previous lecture, I made you to understand that if we say this is the ascending aorta, we'll have to now say that we have the arch of aorta here, and we have the descending aorta. We say this part is the ascending aorta. This part represents the arch of aorta, while this part represents the descending aorta. So these are the three parts, and ultimately they are coming from the left ventricle. This side represents the left ventricle. Ascending aorta, arch of aorta, descending aorta. In my last lecture, I made a video of the descending aorta. For the ascending aorta, it just has two branches that will come out from the ascending aorta. Just above the aortic valve, you have what is called the coronary arteries. Coronary arteries. These coronary arteries, the right and left coronary arteries, supply the heart itself. While if you come to the arch of aorta, you have that the arch of aorta has three branches that will come out from the superior aspect of the arch of aorta. The arch of aorta actually curves over the superior and posterior aspect of the upper part of the heart. So the three branches from the arch of aorta will be, this becomes the brachiocephalic trunk, while this other one represents the left common carotid artery, and this other one represents the left subclavian artery. You have this as left subclavian artery. You have this as the common carotid artery. You have this as the brachial cephalic trunk. Whenever we make mention of trunk, just expect that there will be other branches that will come out from any trunk at all, because we'll meet like three trunks while I describe the arterial supply to the pectoral girdle and upper limb. So for the brachial cephalic trunk, you have two branches that will come out from there. You have one, the right subclavian artery, and you have two, the right common carotid artery. So here is left common carotid, while this side represents the right common carotid artery, and here represents the right subclavian artery. So this is the origin of the two subclavian arteries that primarily supply the pectoral girdle and the upper limb. The right subclavian comes from the brachiocephalic trunk, while the left subclavian actually comes from the arch of aorta itself. So this is how it looks like. So go over to business. The right and the left subclavian arteries, they mirror themselves. That what I mean is that what you see in the left subclavian is exactly what you see on the right subclavian. So the only difference was the origin, which one coming from the brachiocephalic trunk, the other one coming from the arch of aorta itself. So if I take, for instance, I take the left subclavian artery. So we have we continue the diagram as this. This one is the left subclavian artery. It runs superior to the apex of the lungs, and at the level of the outer border of first tree, that is where the subclavian artery, that is the extent of the subclavian artery, before this same vessel will continue as what is called axillary artery. So at a certain stage, the artery will be called subclavian artery. Then later, the same artery will change its name to become axillary artery. Then this same artery will continue at the outer border of teres major. The same artery will now change its name to bear what is called the brachial artery. So the same artery becomes subclavian at a certain stage. It will change its name when it enters into the axilla to form what is called the axillary artery. Then when it goes into the arm, it becomes the brachial artery. Then when it goes into the forearm, it will split to become what is we call the ulnar artery and the radial artery. Here is the ulnar artery, while here becomes the radial artery. So that is what we have skeleton. But I want to point out something for you. In the part you will refer to as the subclavian artery, the subclavian artery has three parts, and these three parts is as a result of a muscle that crosses through the subclavian artery. So you have the muscle called scalenus anterior. That is what actually makes the subclavian artery to have three parts. So you have part 1 of subclavian artery. You have the part that is behind the scalenus anterior to form the part 2. Then you have the remaining part distal to the scalenus anterior to form the part 3 of the subclavian artery. Then these various parts of the subclavian artery has branches that will come out from them. The first part has 3 branches. The second part has 2 branches, while the third part has 0 branch, no branch at all. So for the first part of the subclavian artery, the 3 branches are: 1, they are the thyrocervical trunk, to, okay, this one is the first one. Then the second one is the vertebral artery. Then you have number 3, you have the internal thoracic artery. Then these are the 3 branches that will all come out from the first part of the subclavian artery. Then going to the second part of the subclavian artery, you have the second part, you have number 1. The first branch that will come out from it is called the costo-cervical trunk. Then you have the other branch, which is called the dorsal scapular artery. So the third branch has no branch. The third part of the subclavian artery has no branch at all. So for this thyrocervical trunk, there are 3 branches that will come out from the thyrocervical trunk. So if we say that this is the thyrocervical trunk, and for information, the thyrocervical trunk will supply the thyroid gland, it will supply the muscles of the neck around that region. So the thyrocervical trunk has 3 parts to it. You have that the thyrocervical trunk will have what we call the inferior thyroid artery, inferior thyroid artery. It will also have 2 other branches, which we refer to as superficial cervical and suprascapular artery. You have this as superficial cervical artery, and you have the suprascapular artery. So this is the complete branches coming from the thyrocervical trunk. Then you now move to the costo-cervical trunk. See another trunk here? That's another trunk. The costo-cervical trunk will give rise to what is called the deep. We'll have the deep cervical artery. We will also have another branch coming from the costo-cervical called the superior intercostal artery. So these are the complete branches from the subclavian artery. Then we'll now move to the axillary artery. What do we have in the axillary artery? You find out that the axillary artery also has 3 parts to it. Let me just stop this. It also has 3 parts to it. The axillary artery has 3 parts, and these 3 parts are established by another muscle here. That is what caused the 3 parts to come up on the axillary artery. You have part 1 of axillary artery, you have part 2 of axillary artery, and the 3rd part of axillary artery. The first part of axillary artery, the first part has 1 branch. The second part has 2 branches, while the 3rd part has 3 branches. So this first part, the branch, we call it the superior thoracic artery. That is the superior thoracic from the first branch. You have superior thoracic artery. Then for the second part, you have what is called the thoracoacromial artery, and you have what is called the lateral thoracic artery. So the second part has two: thoracoacromial artery and lateral thoracic artery. Then the third part has three. You have, for the third part, you have what is called number one, the anterior circumflex humeral vessel or artery. You have two, posterior circumflex humeral artery. Then you now have another branch coming from the third part, which is called the subscapular artery. So these are the three branches that will come out from the third part of axillary artery: anterior circumflex humeral artery, posterior circumflex humeral artery, and the subscapular artery. So we are through with the subclavian artery and its branches. We are through with the axillary artery and its branches. Then we'll now move to the brachial artery. From the outer border of the teres major muscle, we now have that we have the brachial artery. The brachial artery is the artery that runs in the arm. As it runs in the arm, there is a branch that will go posteriorly in the arm. There is a branch that will go posteriorly, and that branch is called profunda brachii, or you call it the deep brachial artery. So that is the first branch that will come out from the profunda brachii. It is the first branch that will come out from the brachial artery. Then, as this brachial artery continues to go down, at the coracoid fossa, at the humerus, the brachial artery will split into two. It will split into a medial branch that runs in the forearm, which is called the ulnar artery, and it will have a lateral branch which we refer to as the radial artery. So something will happen as the brachial artery continues to proceed downwards. On the medial side, it will have two branches that will descend. It will have the first branch that is called the superior ulnar collateral artery. It will also have another branch that comes down, which is called the inferior ulnar collateral artery. So these are the two arteries that you find on the ulnar side of the brachial artery. So you have this as superior ulnar collateral artery, and you have this as inferior ulnar collateral artery. So these two branches will come out from the ulnar side. This other one came out as profunda brachii, and it will go on the posterior aspect of the arm, running in a groove that we call the radial groove, together with the radial nerve. So these two branches I've mentioned. Then as the brachial artery bifurcates into ulnar artery and radial artery, on the ulnar side, there is a recurrent branch that will be sent from the ulnar side. This recurrent branch, one will be on the anterior and one is on the posterior. The one on the anterior will anastomose with the inferior ulnar collateral artery, while the one on the posterior side will anastomose with the superior ulnar collateral artery. So these two branches will form an anastomosis around the elbow. In case there is an occlusion to the main artery that goes into the forearm, these collateral arteries will assist in making sure that the elbow joint has enough blood circulation. So you will have that the radial artery side, you will also have a recurrent branch which is called radial recurrent artery.